Hi everyone, I'm Jagravi Singh and this is Race to 2030. Today's episode is about Goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. The pandemic has shown us that most of its mortality rate are found in urban areas or cities. They are also the ones emitting the most CO2 into the atmosphere through the number of cars used and traffic caused through that. In this time and decade, we should be working towards a more sustainable future. To discuss this topic, I'm joined by the founder and president of the local Globe, Helena Smalley. I first got in contact with Helena back in April of this year when I applied as an activist for the local Globe. I have since worked alongside her to promote various ways we can reduce our carbon footprint and usher in a more sustainable future for not just us, but our environment as a whole. Overall, Helena is a kind person to talk to and always there to lend you a hand in your desires for a better future ahead. So, as we continue on with the 21st century and more countries start to adapt more technologies and get more into investing in more of the young people, how do you think we can create sustainable cities?
Yeah, so I think there are four main pillars that need to be addressed if we truly want to create more sustainable cities. And those are buildings, energy, food, and transport. So, in terms of buildings, firstly, I think retrofitting pre existing property is going to be the cheapest yet most effective way to reduce the negative environmental impact of a building. And retrofitting could be involving replacing windows, lighting, ventilation, heat, or air conditioning. And you might be wondering how simply replacing parts of a building can actually be more sustainable. Well, the answer really all lies in efficiency, because according to the ACEEE, which is the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, if energy efficiency is pursued aggressively, then this could actually reduce carbon emissions in the US by as much as 57% in 2050. And this is a massive reduction in emissions, and it's not the only reason to be aware of when thinking about energy efficiency, because the ACEEE also predicts that, again, if pursued aggressively, efficiency could save the US $700 billion by 2050. Yeah, that's crazy. So, on to the next most important pillar, which is energy. And my last point was kind of coasting on an intersection between buildings and energy, but both are super important to be aware of. So let's just jump right into how we can address the issue of unsustainable energy in cities. So regarding energy, I think that there are plenty of ways cities can go about improving the sustainability of their usage of it. And we really need to invest in solar panels. This is the most obvious source of free energy we have. And by installing solar panels on skyscrapers, for example, we would be making good use of a large surface area that's already available. And it would also cut back on the city's use of fossil fuels. We also need to implement more green spaces. It would cut back on the city's use of fossil fuels, and more concentrated pockets of trees and plants will offset carbon dioxide in the air, cool the atmosphere, and ultimately improve the quality of life for citizens. So on to the next most important pillar, food. Cities need to really get excited about the idea of urban growing, and that can include rooftop gardens, teaching children to grow food on the schools, community-supported gardens, and farmers markets. All of these strategies would localize the growing systems, reduce the distance from farm to table, and ultimately reduce food's carbon footprint in the process. And I know you wanted me to go specifically into transport, so I'll let you ask the question first before I go into answering.
Yeah. So, do you think there can be affordable and sustainable transport systems? If so, how?
Yeah, so we definitely need to invest in public transit as this will encourage more people to use the same mode of transport and perhaps prevent so many people from driving. We need to invest in effective bike lanes in order for people to feel safer using that more sustainable option. And those are the obvious ones, but we also need to lower speed limits as doing so can significantly reduce emissions. And this was shown by a study in London, actually, which showed that nitrogen dioxide and PM10 emissions were around 8% lower for cars traveling 20 miles per hour in comparison to those traveling 30 miles per hour. So even that small reduction in miles actually had a solid 8% impact when it came to emissions, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when considering the amount of emissions related to car usage, then it's actually quite a lot.
One of the targets of this goal is to protect the world's cultural and natural heritages. How do you think we can start protecting them?
Yeah, so I think we first need to really define what cultural heritage is because I actually had to do a bit of research about this myself. Heritage can refer to several things: built environments like churches and mosques, natural environments like parks and cemeteries, even artifacts like sculptures and other antiques. So, art and cultural property crime can include the theft, fraud, looting, and trafficking of heritage, as well as a lack of preservation efforts. And this is a real threat to the protection of culture in cities. So I guess the next question is, how can we protect heritage? Well, the first step is to encourage more countries to sign the World Heritage Convention, which was an international agreement adopted by the General Conference of UNESCO in 1972. And the countries that signed the convention form an international network of countries, which are all united with this amazing common aim of safeguarding cultural and national heritage. And specifically, Article 5 of the WHC, the World Heritage Convention, outlines the ways that countries can do this, which, firstly, giving heritage a function in the life of a community is actually helpful to raise awareness and personal investment in these like historic and cultural sites. And the second way is to carry out scientific and technical studies that'll investigate how countries can better protect heritage from physical threats. And the third way is to establish services and expand organizations with the goal of protecting heritage.
As well as being environmentally strong, how can we be economically strong with taking sustainable actions?
Yeah, I think we really need to focus on the idea of a circular economy here. And the concept that I really want to focus on today is the Kallenborg symbiosis. And the Kallenborg symbiosis is a partnership it was established in the 1960s between 12 companies in Kallenborg, Denmark. And this involves byproducts of one company's manufacturing process being repurposed for use in another company's manufacturing process. And this is successful when local collaboration occurs and companies buy and sell residual profit products off one another. And the Kallenborg symbiosis is an effective sustainability solution for several reasons, actually. It'll lead to cost reductions, less emissions and use of resources, and a more competitive market. And if you want some hard numbers regarding the benefits of the symbiosis, well, here you go. Each year, the overall bottom line savings of the partners are around 24 million euros. Yeah, they save around 87,000 tons of materials and around 635,000 tons of CO2. So I think we can learn a lot from what these companies have done and hopefully implement that system in more places.
What policies do you think government should create, or what should governments do to protect people from the aftermath of natural disasters such as tsunamis, earthquakes, or floods?
Yeah, so I think a really important idea is the idea of being proactive rather than reactive with policymaking. We should not be making policies in a haste amidst the aftermath of a natural disaster, as I think this system lacks the planning and consideration necessary for ensuring that policies are an effective long term solution, not just a band-aid on a problem. And one long-term solution that we need to fight harder for is the implementation of the new urban agenda. And the new urban agenda was adopted at the Habitat 3 conference in 2016, and it is a 20-year global blueprint mapping out, among other components, the exploration of solutions to natural disaster threats in communities. And these solutions included things like accessible urban transport, sustainable consumption, the right to adequate housing. It also promotes the idea of cooperation between local and national government, multi-stakeholder partnerships, strengthening urban planning. And another great example is the City Resilience Program, launched in 2017, which is supported by the GFDRR, or the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery. The City Resilience Program has three main goals. It aims to increase accessibility of technical support needed to prepare for disaster, increase accessibility of financing and investments related to community resilience, and create global partnerships to further strengthen their efforts at increasing community resilience. And you might wonder how all this will help when the tornado hits. And the reason why strong community infrastructure is so important is because when a disaster strikes, the community does not want to have to deal with systemic issues that really could have been prevented long before. A community already has enough to deal with when a natural disaster hits, and so it wants to make sure that the government and the infrastructure is strong enough so that it has been supported by long-term policy, and it can ensure that the community has a solid base on which they can begin tackling whatever problem has just hit them. So we really just need to be, in a nutshell, proactive, not reactive.
Thank you so much, Helena. That's all the questions I have for today. Also,
Yeah,
I learned so much from all your facts and statistics. They were all amazing.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Yeah, I actually had a lot of fun looking into all this. It was super interesting to see some of the data and statistics behind what really goes into sustainable community planning and development. So thank you so much. It was an honor to be on this podcast today.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, great.
Well, that's it for my 11th episode. I'll be back for episode 12, which is responsible consumption and production. I learned so much from Helena, and I hope you all did as well. I strongly encourage you all to take part in the local Globe organization. It can help you all gain new skills and build ways to tackle environmental issues. If you have any other thoughts or information to share regarding this topic, please do so in the comment section down below. For any questions or perhaps future episode topics, please message me on my Instagram, JograviSing2030. Thank you and see you all soon.